All right, so welcome. First session, first day. Probably not very much of a night's sleep, so I'm excited to be here and to talk about this really important subject with everybody today, because it's probably one of the most number one things when I mentor other physical therapists. This is what they want to talk about. This is what my clients wanted to talk about. This is a big issue that I've seen in populations all along, women more than men, but definitely across the spectrum of pelvic health. But I will even venture to say, and go back a bit, that this is not inclusive to pelvic health. This is also part of low back pain. And today we're going to really pull together some stories and try to link some evidence across disciplines so that you can be a little bit better of a out-of-the-box thinker and really begin to look at the system a little bit more as a whole and the contributions that may be coming into this. So a funny thing happened on the way to CSM this morning. My contact lens ripped, and I have never done this with glasses on, so this is going to be interesting. So if you see me taking my glasses on and off, it's like it's not a nervous tic, it's I'm trying to figure out the best way to see. So the good news is that I hate slides, for any of you who know me. I'd rather just talk and tell stories and bring in things together, but there is a ton of evidence on these slides. I may go through them quickly, or we may bypass a couple of them, but they're all there and referenced for you to take a deeper dive into the material as you move forward. Also, they have decided that, I have to figure out how to work the mouse here, that I need to stand here and be still. So that's going to be interesting too. All right, so finally, if you have any questions, which I encourage people to ask questions, I really want to know what you want to know. Be sure you come up to the microphone, and they told me to tell you to be sure you speak directly into the microphone so that they're recording this so that everybody can hear your wonderful question. Okay, without further ado, let's get rolling. First of all, I have no financial conflicts to disclose, but I'm open. So if you have any idea of how I can do this, I'm open. I'm ready to learn and take on a new challenge. I need to read in the learning objectives. So the first one is understand the most up-to-date information of bloating and distension and the Abdomino-phrenic response to gas and visceral pain. Explain the risk factors and common presentations in IBS, SIBO, GERD, and endometriosis. Perform objective measures and clinical reasoning for assessing the client with bloating, distension, and Abdomino-phrenic dyssynergia. And at the end, my hope is that you'll come away with 3 different types of intervention strategies that can positively impact bloating and distension and the Abdomino-phrenic response to gas and visceral pain. So I'd like for you to be able to take something back with you that you can actually I can do this with my clients and see how it begins to work. Okay, they have me very close to the edge here too, so if you see me kind of coming over, paranoid that I'm going to step off the side of the stage there. So, all right, so let's talk a little bit about prevalence. It's always important to have a little bit of a historical background and what's going on here. In 2021, they did a big study looking at the prevalence and burden of functional gastrointestinal disorders. And it was the results of the Rome Foundation global study that has led up to Rome 4, which is the newest information out there. 40% of persons worldwide have FGIDs, functional gastrointestinal disorders. It's a lot to say. Say that 10 times. But the biggest thing affecting quality of life and also healthcare use. People don't know how to help them, so they're oftentimes dismissed, which is one of the reasons in Rome 4 that's made Rome 4 different from Rome 1, Rome 2, and Rome 3, for those of you who have followed functional gastrointestinal disorders. The coolest thing about Rome 4 is they have now gathered enough evidence, and there's enough conversation going on that they're accepting the brain-gut axis, they're accepting permeability problems in the colon wall, and they're really looking at Abdomino-phrenic dyssynergia, gas and bloating, and making a case that it should actually, even though it's prevalent with IBS, they still think that it's strong enough that it needs to have its own category for future study. So that's really the exciting part about what Rome is doing for us. They also have a fantastic website, and all of their literature and research is on there. There's a bunch of videos, so it's a great place to just kind of, if you want to refresh some knowledge, or if you want to pull handouts, or just gather some more information, the Rome 4 website is awesome. Okay, so then again in 2023, they continued to look at prevalence and associated factors of bloating, and found out across the world, 18% of the population has had this or has it. Definitely more common in women, a strong association with abdominal and epigastric pain. I'm almost going to tell you that I'm not sure that it can exist if we don't have some sort of discomfort in the visceral system, which interestingly enough is the hallmark sign and symptom of IBS, is the visceral hypersensitivity. That can be anywhere from tremendous, sharp, irritable pain to just discomfort and feeling uncomfortable. And it's much more present in IBS presentations. All right, let's see how this goes. So historically, they've been looking at this since about 2011 as its own entity. Obviously, it's been around since long before 2011. But they looked at bloating within irritable bowel syndrome back then, and of course 60 to 90% reported it as the most bothersome symptom. So if you look at the people with IBS, and then you poll them, the large amount of the IBS population is having issues with bloating and distension, especially in perimenopause. There's a lot of cognitive hypervigilance, and there's a lot of adverse events that are associated with this. So when we think about IBS, the most interesting thing to think about is that generally people don't just get IBS. Or they don't start having symptoms, IBS-C type symptoms. It's not a diagnosis, it's a category, right? And usually, and I love this down here because it talks about hypervigilance and it talks about adverse events. And I have to say that every person that I've had in the last 15 years for sure, because I wasn't smart enough to ask the questions before that. So every client that I had that was presenting with IBS symptoms, when I track back with them as to when the symptoms start, and you start asking questions about that time period, you're going to find what's going on. Generally, it's come after things as interesting as a virus or a death of a loved one, and anything in between. Could be family member crisis, could be all kinds of things. But because of the stress response that the system undergoes, the system bypasses its adaptive response, and it moves into these kinds of chronic situations here. And it oftentimes doesn't happen until at least 6 months to a year following the crisis. So I find that pretty interesting, because the other story is the most difficult clients that I also have had to treat are the ones with severe external anal sphincter spasms. Or in other words, it's just like the anismus group. And most of the ones that I had the privilege of seeing, I started learning about this back in the days when I was working in the head injury unit in Louisiana. And it was very interesting because it was the first time that we were doing the Craig beds, and we were like letting the people move, and people were starting to come out of their, the Glasgow scale was going on, but we were treating these people who were surviving at the time, and then trying to learn to thrive. And one of the biggest issues they had was anismus, could not go to the bathroom at all. So there's something to that whole, and we know this already, right? But I think it's nice to kind of triangulate the stories and pull them in, because a big piece of what we can do to help people, we'll get to this in the second part of the talk, but the big thing that we can do to help people is really help them regulate their nervous system. We can help with the physical piece, but at the same time, we got to look at the nervous system too, which is why I love this cognitive hypervigilance and adverse effects. Even from 2011, they were starting to talk about that. Going on with more slides. This particular topic looked at the same thing, abdominal bloating, in the United States. And 1 in 7 Americans from an 89,000 sample size would complain of bloating and distension. 1 in 7, that's a lot. When you think about that and you extrapolate out 89,000 Americans that were polled, how many Americans do we have living in this country? A lot more than 89,000. So the number really, really increases, and it helps you see the magnitude, because sometimes people will look at that and say, well, 1 in 7 is not that bad. But if we have 1 billion, that's going to be a lot of people. More severe in women, again, and associated with IBS, chronic constipation, and inflammatory bowel disease, and abdominal pain, of course. There comes that visceral hypersensitization piece. Chronic constipation is interesting that this starts entering the fold now, because through some of the Rome work, they're looking at what are the correlations, right? IBS has a strong correlation with abdominal distension and bloating. But which IBS is it? And what they're really finding out is more of the IBS constipative variety. So in chronic constipation, I know that they have a chronic constipation that doesn't have a visceral hypersensitivity. Have you all seen that? Because I haven't. My group may be different, but everybody that I've ever seen that has chronic constipation has some sort of discomfort. Bloating, burping, always holding their belly, wishing they could go to the bathroom. Once they go to the bathroom, they feel like they're so much better. All markers of IBS, right? So I think it's important that they started looking at this, because if we've got a group that's got chronic constipation, swelling, bloating and distension, IBS, we probably are looking at a population that's got chronic low back pain as well. And I'll make a case for that in a bit. Okay. Okay, looking at this study, they looked at 50 subjects with IBS and 50 subjects without. All of the IBS reported symptoms of bloating regardless of bowel habit. There it is again. It's very prevalent, 48% with distension, and predominantly IBS constipative. So another case to make for, can we whittle this down, or what are all the parameters we really need to consider? Because what are these clients usually tell us? I'm not really constipated. If I can move my bowels, I feel so much better. But it's they don't have the constructs that we have to like say, oh yes, you are constipated. They feel like they have a bowel movement, they're fine. No relationship to age, parity, BMI, or psychological status. Interesting, right? IBS was the key for having the bigger prevalence. And then historically, again, going back to 2019, they began to look at what's the clinical approach in management to help us move forward with this. So I've circled in red kind of 2 key areas where I see pelvic health services that can take place, and or just any kind of service that comes to like the physical therapy world or the physical and occupational therapy world. When they looked at this, if you see on the left-hand side of the screen, I kind of like made it easier for you to read here. But basically, the first thing that, and this is medical, okay? This is not our evaluation coming in and like pulling the pieces together and figuring out what to treat. This is from the medical perspective. So the first thing they're going to do is give them some antispasmodics, such as simethicone or peppermint oil. Now, if they have GERD, they're not going to do peppermint oil because it doesn't work very well. So it kind of makes things a little bit less for them. And most of the time when people come in to see their medical providers, they don't talk about all the various things that are going on. So they don't talk about the fact that they have terrible dyspepsia and these other things. They talk about their constipation and their bloating. So it's interesting when you start to pull the pictures together and we look at it from a systems perspective. Dietary, lactose and poorly absorbed carbohydrates, which is the FODMAP diet. And constipation, looking at medically, they're going to look at Amitiza and Linzess and some of the other ones. Microbiome modulation, they're going to look at probiotics and the rifaximin, which is for the SIBO, the antibiotic that they tend to give if they think it's SIBO. And then they're going to finally look at gut-brain axis modulation. And this is the one that gets me every single time. I know it's the best thing we have out there right now, but when we put people on SSRIs, what is the side effect? Every time, constipation. So we're just kind of like, we got to balance this out somehow. And I wish there were better things. But, you know, low-dose SSRIs are better than higher dose, of course, and people are also on all kinds of other things as well that could be affecting their systems. But I just wanted to point this out because I think it's key to work with their medical providers, especially if they tell you all of this started not being able to go to the bathroom when I started getting on the SSRIs. And it's like, okay, let's have a conversation. Let's talk. Here's how you talk to your doctor about it. Because there's probably something else that they can do, or maybe a different one might work with your system better, not just make it out there. So where I circled in red, they look for the evaluation, alarm signs, bacterial overgrowth, dietary intolerances, weight gain, psych disorders, maybe. And when they don't see any of those, then they say, reassurance. Reassurance of what, right? Reassure that, yeah, this is a problem. You've got it. And then as you kind of move down the thing, and then, of course, recommend diaphragmatic breathing. So send them to us, because now we can get them into our wheelhouse, and we can start working through the systems from our point of view a little bit better. Take it all the way down. They still do more medical stuff. They're still saying no response. Finally, at the very end, the very last thing is abdominal biofeedback therapy. And it's like, oh, why do we have to wait till they go through all of this? Maybe that thing at the end needs to be up where it's like diaphragmatic breathing, or be considered as they're beginning the medical treatment for SIBO and doing some different things. I would like to see this get bumped up and get more side to side with the medical model here. Okay, again, we've talked about this and talked about this and talked about this. But one of the things that this article covers, again, in a little bit of a different way, is the diet, SIBO, constipation, visceral hypersensitivity, but they go a little bit deeper into Abdomino-phrenic Dyssynergia. And so, again, the medical model, are there dietary culprits? Change it. Is constipation present? Maybe consider pelvic floor dysfunction. Instead of, pursue treatment and consider. I love that. Like, we're not treatment? Come on, let's get this going here. And then are the symptoms owing to SIBO? Consider the testing and treatment there. Visceral hypersensitivity, consider treating with a neuromodulator. We talked about neuromodulators. They oftentimes will cause constipation. So we need to be up higher into this area. But at least this particular article said, are symptoms consistent with Abdomino-phrenic Dyssynergia? And again, all the medical people know is biofeedback. So if there's an article that comes out on anything for pelvic health that has biofeedback in it, the GI group is going to pick it up. Anything else? We're not loud enough. That's on us. We need to get louder. We need to get in there. We need to be doing more and more to make this, to show we have treatments that actually can affect, and that we have protocols and paradigm shifts that can actually work with clients, not only with their physical, but their nervous system regulation, because there's a big piece of this with this work here with gastrointestinal disorders. All right, another article, I'm not going to read all of this stuff to you, but they focus on very much of the same thing, looking at dietary modulation, all of the stuff, controlling abdominal wall muscle, types of things here. And so in this particular one, if you look down towards the bottom, you'll see augmented conscious perception of wall tension, intestinal wall inflammation, neurosensitization, and they're the first ones to really kind of spell this out for the GI group, local spinal and brain pain circuitry. Finally. And this is like, again, Rome 4 is beginning to, grab onto this and to really say, we've got to look more into this. We can't ignore the microbiome. We can't ignore permeability issues. We can't ignore them anymore. We have to bring the whole gut-brain axis onto the table and help people. Emotional stress, anxiety, somatization, and hypervigilance. There we go again. And what's the hypervigilance all about? Can't leave the house till I go to the bathroom. What if I have an emergency and have to go to the bathroom while I'm out of the house? What if I don't go to the bathroom? I'm not going to feel good all day long. Oh my goodness gracious, right? So a lot of hypervigilance going on. Yeah, that worked today, but what about tomorrow? So there's a lot of that disturbance in there. And then distending abdominal reshaping by abnormal viscerosomatic responses. What does that mean? In plain words, what it means is that in response to pain, which could be by gas or visceral hypersensitivity, so a normal stretch to the lumen giving you a visceral hypersensitive response, okay? When we have pain, what does our body do? It fires off something in the motor system to move away from it, right? If our foot hurts, we shift to the other side. If our back hurts and we have a herniated disc, not only do we shift to the other side, but we get all kinds of muscles and other things going that's going to keep us permanently over there until somebody comes in and helps us get straightened out again, even after the pain event. So when we're thinking about this, we want to think about what happens here. So the diaphragm contracts, the abdominal wall actually softens. Why does it do that? To move away from the pain. So there's a real reason this dyssynergia or dyssynergic reaction, synergistic reaction, whatever you want to call it. There's a reason for it. And it's because it wants to get away from the pain. And I think we need to kind of respect that, because when we look at this, abnormal or abdominal muscle relaxation, diaphragmatic descent, which means the diaphragm tightens up and moves down, and thoracic expansion. We can't treat those alone. These have to be treated kind of as a synergy. And we know how to do this. We do this all the time with the pelvic floor dyssynergic reaction to go into the bathroom, right? Which is an interesting story here too, because oftentimes you'll see these two things hand in hand. You'll see the dyssynergic reaction in the posterior triangle, along with the abdomino-phrenic dyssynergic reaction. And that's interesting because a lot of times people will come in and they have had their workup by the GI and they're sending them to you for biofeedback, right? Because that's what they know. And you lay them down and you do your thing and you go, you know what, this is great. Like they can descend, they can lift. I don't see any of this. Where do you put a load in? This is where the balloon catheter works so beautifully, because you're people who have learned and can do it without an issue, which means that we have synergies that work until we need them to work. So we have to put a load in. The balloon catheter is wonderful because it puts a load into the rectum. Then you'll see that dyssynergic response. I promise you, you'll see it. Same thing with this. We want to think about, they may not have this until they eat, they're up all day, they're stressed, maybe they're over-exercising. When does abdominal bloating and distension occur mostly? Can you imagine which time of day? For those of you who've treated it, it's always in the afternoon and evening, right? The worst of it anyway. And then if it's really bad, it's the next day too. But for the most part, it's the early afternoon and evening. So my thing is, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but my thing is, they need to be on my schedule. These are people who need to be on my schedule at the end of the day. I want to see them post-workout. I want to see them after they've eaten whatever they've eaten during the day. I want to see them when they're having their problem, not when they're feeling good and everything's wonderful and my belly moves really well and my diaphragm moves really well. Well, I want to see them when things start to get into trouble. Okay, we can't dismiss bloating and SIBO. Then we have to also think about people with endometriosis, bellies and scar tissues, because that affects the sensitivity of the GI system. Movement system changes, we've just talked about that, but we also want to think about what's actually happening up above in the stomach, and probably, I'll make a case for this later, up into the glossopharyngeal region in the larynx, because dyspepsia is a big piece of this, and it's something that's been going on a long time, and people aren't seeking treatment for it because they're not having heartburn. They're having more other symptoms, and we'll get into that in just a minute. So just kind of teasing the system out for you. So again, none of this exists in isolation. We have all of these things together. Undigested food in the stool and the small intestine is typically what causes SIBO. And that means that there's not enough stomach acid, or the stomach pumps aren't working adequately to digest the food. If you think about it, if the cardiac sphincter isn't closing off the way it's supposed to, the acid pumps aren't going to come on as strong as they need to. So the acid pumps themselves may not be, proton pumps or whatever you want to call them, may not be the issue. The issue may be how the viscera is operating. And so if the cardiac sphincter isn't closing off good, then pepsin is getting out of the stomach and washing up across the top of the respiratory system. When that happens, we don't have enough pepsin in the stomach to digest the food. So it's kind of, again, okay, we've got both ends of the spectrum here that we need to think about, but it's important because there's some simple things that can be done to really get people feeling better. So keep that in mind as we move forward. How many of you have seen this book or have heard her talk? Dr. Kaufman. She has spent her life as an ENT working with performance artists. And they have come to her for brittle voice. My voice isn't working. Something's wrong. I must have polyps on my larynx or my vocal folds. And she and Dr. Stern got together, and she'd done a lot of work in her lab, and her book is full of client stories. But they got together and realized that the piece of paper we're handing people in the emergency room isn't enough. We have to get out there and really educate people on what's going on. So this book, I love the title, Dropping Acid. It's great. For some of you who are in my age group, you'll understand it a little better. But the whole story here is about the enzyme for breaking down protein, the pepsin, is leaking from the stomach. All right, and it's getting all over the larynx. They call it larynx glossopharyngeal reflux. They're moving it to now, the new buzz term that's coming out is respiratory reflux. So, because it affects the entire respiratory system. And look at this and think about your clients, how many, and us, how many of us chronic cough? Was it really due to an infection that just never cleared? Chronic throat clearing. Why are they chronically clearing their throat? Because they've got too much mucus production. Why do they have too much mucus production? Is it really an allergy? Or is it the pepsin irritating the system, the tissues? Choking spontaneously, choking during eating, change of voice, straining of voice, loss of voice, painful voice. And her work, they went and looked at endoscopy at all these glossopharyngeal regions and saw this angry red tissue and correlated it with the types of symptoms they were having. And then they started investigating what they were eating. And every single one of them was somewhat addicted to a very acidic food, whether it was a Diet Coke, tart cherries, different things. In her book, she's very, very clear, and if you listen to her, she's got great blog posts, and she's on Facebook Live, so you can go in and ask her questions. And she's very honest and very candid about things. But her thing is that if you're going to solve this problem, people need to be on a diet in the beginning for at least a month with nothing lower than a 5.0 pH. That's a pretty restrictive diet, but it's doable. And part of the things, that she talks about is that you've got to get everything to kind of settle down and clear up, and then you can start to test the foods and see which ones bother you. And, of course, that means that everybody's favorite foods are off the table, which is sugar, which is alcohol, which is a lot of fruits, citrus fruits and stuff. And how much of this, like onions and garlic, all right, we're starting to sound like the FODMAP diet, right? These things go hand in hand. So this is why when you can get people to commit and get this cleared up, you'll start hearing things that'll happen for them. They will tell you, I don't cough nearly as much as I did anymore. I don't clear my throat. My kids said I don't sound like I'm strangled all the time. Different things will start to happen. So it's a key piece to pay attention to and to ask questions about. Oftentimes these people are on proton pump inhibitors, or they're chewing a lot of Tums, and it doesn't really help, does it? No, because it's not getting to the part where it needs to get to. So the deal is that the pepsin gets activated in a low pH, and that's what keeps that rolling. It's in an area of the body where it doesn't belong, and we want to deactivate it, keep it deactivated, and allow people to move forward. So when we have this chronicity, it does affect the diaphragm and the pressure system, leading to more irritability, bloating, and pelvic floor dysfunction, right? Okay. We doing all right? I promise I'll give you a break in a little bit. It's a long time to sit, but we're not used to sitting. Okay. Endo and IBS. Patients with endometriosis have a threefold risk of developing IBS. Why? Because they have lesions, especially if they have bowel endo, they have lesions on their bowel system. And that creates hypersensitivity of the GI system. And that's the hallmark sign of IBS. Oftentimes, they will be treated for IBS and different things without ever being worked up for endo. And so we have to kind of begin to think about what's going on here, what's happened. So there's mast cell activation, neuronal inflammation, leaky gut, and dysbiosis. And endo in the small intestine, the lesions are a perfect little dark place for things to slip into and to get inflamed, infected, and irritated. So oftentimes with people with endo and IBS, you'll have a kind of a cycle of SIBO. They'll treat it, it'll get better, then it'll come back. They'll treat it, it'll get better, and it'll come back. And they haven't really looked at trying to make sure that, hey, why do we have these lesions here? And what are they? And perhaps this is the real issue. So when you compare the two, and you can look across the slide and see this, basically with IBS, it's chronic, moderate abdominal pain and upper ab pain, whereas with bowel endo, it's chronic and more severe abdominal pain and lower abdominal pain. It's just, if you look at the bowel endo, it's just more. There's more stuff going on here that doesn't fit the regular IBS box. Rectal bleeding associated with menses. That should tell you something right there. Like as they're having they're menstruating, and they're also noticing as they wipe further and further back that it's still red. So that can be a big thing to pay attention to. And whereas the IBS are going to have more of the anal bleeding due to tears and hemorrhoids. Not that you can't have that in endo, it's just that these are the things that bowel endo is going to give you a little bit more for you to be able to ask a few more intelligent questions of your clients. Okay, let's link this to chronic low back pain, because how we're going to go about the intervention that I love to do with this needs us to kind of understand a few things about the diaphragm and how it behaves when we have pain in the system below the diaphragm. So historically, in 2008, Maggie Smith and Hodges and Company did a huge, giant study in Australia. 38,000 women from 3 age cohorts, including constipation, hemorrhoids, and other bowel problems, and found a huge correlation of chronic low back pain and GI dysfunction, like almost an 80% correlation. So there's something to that. That doesn't exist just because it should be existing. It just, there's a reason for it. So the study, with this strong association, they talked about they put some thoughts out there, some theories out there, which kind of hold true now that we're moving into the stuff that Rome 4 and some of the other research is doing for us. So referred pain through viscosomatic convergence, altered pain perception, increased spinal loading when straining during defecation. We've known that forever. I went to PT school in the 70s, well, 80. And it doesn't matter. We still knew that that was one of the questions you asked was, does it hurt when you strain to go to the bathroom in your back? Because we were thinking that might be leading to a breakdown of a disc. So, but reduced support of the abdominal contents and spine, secondary to changes in function of the abdominal muscles. So back in 2009, they were already postulating that the muscles were going offline, especially the abdominal muscles, during these kinds of things. Why? You would expect those muscles to tighten up and build that bridge around the spine, build that bridge around the GI system to make it function better. And it's doing just the opposite. Why the dysynergic response? So, Kohler did a study in 2012 where I wish he had done it upright, but you got to go with what you get. And he looked at people laying down. He had people who did not have back pain and people who did, basically. And what he did was he had them lay down, they did an MRI, they looked at the motion of the diaphragm, they looked at tidal volume breathing, they looked at what happened when you input an isometric contraction, not only on the position of the diaphragm, but how much it was able to move with breathing during that contraction. And what they did, you can see the arrows coming down. They did it on the hand, the arm coming out, and they did it on the leg. That was where the contractions. So first they looked at what the diaphragm looked like on these people before they did anything, just tidal volume breathing. And of course what they found was, with the people with chronic low back pain, the position of their diaphragm was different and it didn't move up and down as much. Didn't have the same excursion. So what happened was, the diaphragm with people with chronic low back pain, the crust of the diaphragm, remember, is more closer to the ventral spine, lifts up and pulls back. That's interesting, isn't it? Like, why would it do that? But if you think about it, if we have a tightening around of the diaphragm against the spine, what else is being compressed? The aorta, the esophagus, the vagal nerves, all of that neurology, everything, right? And then what they did was they added the isometric contractions. They saw a change in the people without low back pain. They never developed that ventral pullback of their diaphragm. They just had less excursion because they were under load in their extremities. And the people with the chronic low back pain, it just got worse, basically. The angle, and you can see this in the gray picture to the right, the second gray picture, that's that angle and lack of excursion there, and that whole ventral piece of the diaphragm is pulled up. So it's interesting when they talk about diaphragmatic dyssynergia, or what the diaphragm muscle does, they kind of oversimplify it. They just say that it tightens up and goes down. It's actually not true. It lifts up and pulls back, and that's what flattens it down. So you got to think about the 3D picture of the diaphragm doing its thing. It's not just coming down like this, it's coming like this. So we have to kind of consider all of those pieces together there. And here it is for you to read at some point at your lovely leisure. But one of the things that they thought about was like, well, maybe if the diaphragm is functioning abnormally, that's going to directly affect the abdominal muscles. And when you think about breathing, if our diaphragm isn't working as efficiently and optimally as it should, we're going to start doing other things to try to draw breath in. And this is probably one of the postulates, besides deconditioning, of why people with low back pain, especially chronic low back pain, begin to have issues of degeneration, because they're not moving. You can't move well if your diaphragm isn't optimized. They may try to exercise, and what kind of exercises do we give them? Planks. Maybe not the best. Maybe we want to do some things that's going to actually help their diaphragm move, like rotation, flexion extension, things side to side, any way that you want to look at it. Do we have a question? Hi. You may have to turn it on.
This is amazing, thank you.
I can kind of hear you. Mm-hmm.
So my question is, this article is about low back pain, but could you extrapolate for me how, because the diaphragm attaches to the upper lumbar spine, that it might be affecting the thoracic spine?
Come closer, I can't, and I'll repeat the question into the microphone. So what? Oh, okay. So the question is the attachment of the diaphragm to the lumbars, does it actually affect the thoracic as well? And I would say 100% yes, because one of the things that we see in chronic low back pain and we see in GI dysfunction is a lack of rotation at the T12-L1 junction. And when we have lack of rotation there, that's going to anchor the thorax down, and we may have what they call thoracic expansion, but it's more of a lifting up of the diaphragm, of the rib cage to try to get air in and to work in that way. I hope that answered your question. Thank you. Perfect. Okay, and what about the abdominal wall and pelvic floor? Well, we're talking about that, right? So, looking at abdominal and pelvic floor activity in 2022, we've got some good evidence here that has related respiratory diaphragmatic activity in subjects with and without specific low back pain. Okay, so they took the chronic low back pain patients and compared them with people without back pain, and they looked at what was happening with their abdominal wall, diaphragm, and the pelvic floor. And basically, the subjects with low back pain have less thickness at rest of the oblique, external oblique, okay? Less excursion of the pelvic diaphragm, and less diaphragmatic thickness at tidal volume in inspiration and expiration, and in inspiration to full volume. All right, what does that mean? It means that in the case of chronic low back pain, we have pelvic floor dysfunction. It doesn't lift and lower as well, so it's not working optimally. We have a diaphragm that's not working optimally, and we have a concomitant inhibition of the abdominal wall. So that sets us up for, what is this thing? This abdominal-phrenic dyssynergia. And by the way, the word phrenic here doesn't mean phrenic nerve. They use phrenic for diaphragm. So when you're wondering about that, I had to actually go to the Rome 4 website and listen to the guy describe it, and he said, oh, it's like abdominal and diaphragmatic. We use phrenic for diaphragm. It's like, okay, that clears it up. Thank you. Because I never could figure out, where does the phrenic nerve come into this? Okay, you know me and the cervical spine. I'm kind of thinking, all right, let's pull the neck forward too. But compare Kohler's article, 212, to this. And so, what they did in this study, the top is normal people with a normal response to gas being added to their colon. Okay, so they took people and they added gas to them. They had a group that was IBS, they had a group that wasn't, and the ones without any problem or any pain, the diaphragm, when they added the gas in, they got the abdominal muscles to pull in and contract. That's what they're supposed to do. Not hard. We're not talking about abdominal gripping here. But when we have gas introduced to our system, what does our brain want to do? It wants us to move the gas out of our system. So we have to contract our abdominal wall somewhat in order to make that go. When we contract our abdominal wall, it releases the diaphragm. And so the diaphragm is now free to move as a pump over a canister. Okay, so think about nature. Picture a lake that goes into a narrow way, and all of a sudden, as it goes and tumbles over the falls a little bit, it picks up steam and it picks up movement, and you get much more of a flow through there. In normal mechanics for the GI system, we need the abdominal wall to come on and be that border that comes into the lake. Okay, so that the pump on top, the diaphragm, can work as a pump and pump the gas through. That's what it looks like in normal people. In people that are abnormal with this, the diaphragm descends and contracts, which means it pulls back towards the spine and flattens out, right, because of pain. And the abdominal wall moves away from the pain. So if you see that on the bottom slide there, I'm pointing here like you can see what I'm doing. The abdominal wall moves away from the pain. And so now you have this setup where you're not only not bringing the lake closer together, you're actually eroded it, and now the lake is bigger. And there's no way anything can push the gas out because the diaphragm's not working well now. And this intra-abdominal pressure, what does that do to the pelvic floor? It's going to make it have to lift up and hold against it. But if it does it long enough, it may say, we're out. We're not playing. We're done. And then gas, leaking, everything else, all the the story. So since biofeedback is such a big thing, that one article looked at using biofeedback to retrain the muscles. They didn't really give a lot of great parameters or stuff that they did in the article. But basically, what they looked at was they wanted to increase the activity of the anterior abdominal muscles, particularly during expiration. That makes sense. That's what we teach all the time, right? Breath out, abdominal muscles tighten up gently, pelvic floor lifts, breath in. I'm going to take this, and the sessions lasted 40 minutes, and they had fairly good results. I'm going to take this just a little bit further. We're going to come back to this slide. I just want you to watch this. Fingers crossed it plays. Retraining Dyssynergia is to get people to just allow their belly to droop all the way down. You don't need to hear it, just watch. Sometimes having your hand underneath can really help them feel safe to do this. And then from here, I'm just going to ask you to lift your belly up slightly. So we let the belly go down, meet them where they are. And then lower it back down. We begin to just gently lift the belly up. That nice length-tension relationship going here. There's no movement happening up here in her back. And again, lift and lower. All the way. I'm going to get that last little bit. And lift again. And lower. Now I'm going to ask making sure they don't blow their belly out, and it's just a drop. Like just a letting go and a lifting up. And then as you exhale, lift up. Easy. Good. And then breathe in, let it relax. And breathe out. Just to get breath and body coordinated again. Then the final piece of this is to develop the canister. Lift your belly up slightly, and you're going to hold this. Breathe in and out, but don't let this go. And we're looking for, and you're seeing it, very nice thoracic diaphragm.
So we've created the canister, we're adding the pump
now.
now.
Maintaining the canister in her abdomen and using that diaphragm as a pump. Good. Okay, next we'll have you sit up. So we can teach this in sitting as well. And you're going to lift your belly back up and in. Oftentimes I'll use a metaphor like there's a ball in your belly, and as you lower it, you're
Practicing the same movement in sitting.
Showing the ball.
Because people
And then as you
aren't
come
on
back
all
in, you're
fours.
lifting the ball back up and in.
It's not relevant.
Good. So she's got good control of this in sitting, so we can move on. We can coordinate with breath next. And since she already has a coordination pattern, we're just going to have her build the canister, hold here now, and breathe.
There we go. See
in
how
and out
nice
without letting
the
this
thorax starts
nice
to
and-
move.
It's not a heavy.
We've got a little
pull in
support
with
for it
your belly.
underneath.
It's a very soft, it's a very easy one. But you can see that nice movement of getting that 360-degree diaphragm working as the pump that we need, pushing through the canister to help move the gas through and thus relieve the discomfort. Good. Finally, go ahead and stand up. Okay. So she's going to stand against the wall.
So we've got her standing against the wall now. Feet are slightly flexed.
Relaxing her knees.
Relaxed.
She can drop one hand onto her belly if she wants to, so that she can feel what she's doing here. And I'm just going to have you release your belly. There we go. You can see your hands move. And then bring the belly back up and in. So we know we have the movement there. Now we're going to establish the canister. Keep the belly in and do your breathing. And think about that movement like an umbrella breath, like the umbrella opening in your chest.
Thank you.
Perfect. Good. That's it.
Okay. So, the idea behind this, which is why I want to see people, and I think we should see people when it's actually happening, is because this is easy to do when you're not hurting, right? A lot of people are very reluctant to tighten up their abdominal muscles when they're in pain. I don't want to send them home with an exercise that they're going to do and be in pain with. I want to see them when they're distended, right? Bloating is the feeling of like you're so full, but distension is the actual change in girth. I want to see them when that's going on because we want to get them in these positions where they can offload their belly. If they can't get on their hands and knees, they can lean over a countertop. There's ways that they can do it. They can stand up and lean over their desk. There's ways that they can make this happen. I want to see them when they're in pain, and I want to meet them where they are, okay? And I want to work with them to get this. So you saw that particular synergistic activity that I did. These are some of the other things that I've added using manual stretching over the lower rib cage and obliques. Sometimes when you first get them in the bent over position, you can come in around the rib cage, mobilize it and stretch it. And you can come down around the abdominal muscles and just help them with those, let go and be able to like droop and then lift and do the appropriate thing. You can use their voice to help them. I like using the low register, especially with exhale, to help recruit that abdominal muscle slightly when they're in that particular position. Okay, if they may not be able to lift it, it may hurt too much, so I'll just ask them to do something like just hum for me, and they'll feel those muscles begin to pull up a little bit. So maybe their trigger is just a hum, and they're not thinking about over recruiting their abdominal wall, because what we have with these clients is the tendency to overdo it, right? And then it hurts, and then we fail, and we don't like it, and
all of that. So we want to have them do this several times so they can get the hang of it. But you want to do it in a position to where you can minimize the pain response, just like we do with other things. If they hurt every time they bend down, let's find another way to bend. Let's change how you bend. Let's change how you squat. Let's change how you do this. Let's change your response to bloating so we can actually move some of the gas out. Okay, then I retrain in the seated standing against the wall. The world is your oyster. What is relevant to them? Many of my clients who were working desk jobs, so we leaned over the desk. If they didn't want to do that at work, that was their time to go to the bathroom. And, just we get in a position where they can put their hands on their thighs and lean over and practice. And, close the door and do their thing. And then when they came back to their desk every hour, because I always want them to take breaks, do your breathing. Let their belly go, lift it up slightly, let it go, lift it up slightly. They can do that sitting there quietly. And as you saw in the end of the video, I could have put her hands on her belly and sitting, and you can. I could put she put her hands on her belly and standing. That's biofeedback. That's building interoception, which is one of the keys to changing hypersensitivity and hypersensitive responses, is improve people's interoception of what's actually going on, and not the story that their sympathetic brain and amygdala is telling them, right? We want them to really feel empowered to change what's going on and to actually feel it. And what I'll do with people like this, too, is I'll do a lot of what I learned from Eric Franklin's work, is consumer comparison. I absolutely love that. First time I ever heard that phrase, and I just stole it and used it all the time. But we'll do it once and let them feel, tell me what you're feeling, they'll tell me about their pain, their stuff and everything, and we'll change it and we'll work on it, and then we'll have them compare where you were before to where you are now. I think it's essential in anything that we do with people that they understand where they were coming from and where they are now, because that's how they build that interoception, that internal guidance to the compass they want to be on to make the changes themselves. If we can empower people in that way, they're likely probably going to do it because they're going to find it relevant. So we know that people need 3 things in order to make something stick. 1, the activity needs to be relevant. If it's not relevant, they're not doing it. They'll do it for a week. And if you get a real good person, they might do it for 2 or 3, but they're not going to do it as a practice. It's got to be relevant. Meet them where they are. Number 2, they have to feel safe. That's where building interoception comes in. That's when it comes in. Like, where is it in your belly that's telling you need to go to the bathroom? With the rectal balloon catheter, that's what I do. They may not have an urge response to the pressure in the rectum, but they're getting it somewhere else in their body. And the interoception is they're being able to understand what that means and being able to make changes there. The third thing they need is it needs to be consistent. Will they do it every day? So if you have those 3 things, with anything you do, you're going to be much more successful. All right. All right, it's been an hour. Why don't we take 5 minutes, stand up, move around, practice the belly real quick. And I'm going to start talking again in 5 minutes, so everybody move for a second. Yeah.
So with diaphragmatic breathing, we also cue them to actively inhale, they're like contracting their abdomen or pushing out, and then relaxing when they exhale. But here it seems that they're active when they're
Well, diaphragmatic breathing has many, many, many forms, and no breathing is bad. This particular response is set up to help people overcome the synergic response that they're having to visceral pain. So people who are having visceral pain and having bloating are not going to do well with that type of breathing because it's going to feed into the bad synergy, it's going to feed into the wrong synergy for them to need gas.
That's how they planned it out.
You're welcome.
Before you begin, I'm going to make an announcement to
Yeah.
hold all questions.
Yeah.
At the mic. So sorry that happened.
Can you wait till the end? Do you mind? I appreciate it so much. Give me 5 minutes so I can take a break too. Picking up my PA, put it on Instagram. I just have to check with my model to make sure she's okay with it.
Hands off. Oh, got it. Okay. Oh, got it. Teach the parents and stuff. Such a good idea. Yeah. Cool. Thank you. I'll be here. I'll protect you.
Okay, thanks.
Such a good talk. I love your lecture style. It's
good,
so
thanks.
clear. And is there anything I can get for you? You have water. There's a thing in back. Do you want me to top it off for you?
No, I'm good right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll grab some when I finish.
During the maybe during the Q&A, I can fill it up. I'm your full service.
Thank you. I love it.
They didn't tell me to do that, but it's just I do what comes natural. But I want you to rest your voice.
Are you
So I'm
taking
not here
over
to.
as...
No, I just finished.
Oh, you just finished?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So yeah,
So you're cycling off.
yeah, yep. Darla, Darla's it now, and she's gonna be so good.
Oh, President, yeah.
Yeah, Darla.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Oh,
just
I knew that. I knew that. I
Oh,
was
am I
wondering if you
doing-
were coming on to this role next. Or...
No programming. No. Oh, I will.
That's a lot of work.
I will tell you though, I'm on the programming committee for the IPPS. Have you been to IPPS meetings? Haven't you? It's going to be in Cartagena, Colombia, in October. If you're interested, come up here.
I love you. I saw you.
I love you too, darling. I've seen you forever.
No, we'll talk after. Yeah. You've been taking very good care of my little person, Kathleen. Kathleen Lisinski.
Okay.
She's come to your course a couple of times. Santa Cruz.
So you can just rest.
She loves you.
I remember,
Oh, oh.
I remember Tafflin's come to couple. And how do you, and, oh, she's just in the mental
Protective of that.
Actually, I'm also treating her. I'm also consulting, treating her. too. And the work that you've done with her has been so helpful. I love you, Nicole. Wait for me after, okay? Wait for me after. Wait for me after so I say hi. Yes. Yes, thank you.
So yeah, I'm on the programming committee, so that'll be exciting. So who knows, maybe one day I'll do programming here. But yeah, as we start to seek out lectures and things like that, I have some input now, some power. Just kidding. It's my first year. Yeah, I have no idea if anyone's going to listen to me. But you just tell me when you want to, and I'll tell people one more minute, and then just give them another minute because I'm just turn back in.
Yeah, just shake it out a little bit.
Yeah, totally.
And they all ask their own questions to each other. And
Yeah. And then close all questions to get everybody.
I'm not saying anything anymore. Okay.
I'll get. Do you want me to? That way I can have people hold questions to the end. Or
Yeah,
do you
yeah.
wanna announce it? Okay. All right, everybody, please get your seats, and we'll begin in 1 minute. as everyone's getting back into your seat, please hold all your questions until the end so that we can make sure she can get through all the content and just jot them down and come up to the mic in the middle after her lecture. Thank you.
Awesome. Yes, we'll have plenty of time for questions, I promise. Okay. So as we get settled back in, hopefully that pulled the story together for you in a good way, in a way that will make some sense. Will also help you understand how you need to treat the spine as well as the gut. We know that already. I know I'm preaching to the choir, but it's nice to have the story pulled together in a way that kind of makes some sense, to give you some handles to walk in on and to start to lift and grab. Also, you can take these stories that I have in the beginning and take them to your clinics when they say, we don't know what to do with pelvic health, we don't want to screen it. If you come to my talk at 11, there's another whole big bunch of stuff about why it's important to screen for this stuff, so our counterparts can get more and more used to it. The louder we get means we need help, because there's no way we can reach everybody that we need to reach right now. So the more we know, the better we go. All right. So after all of that and everything that's said and done, what about neural tension? And we know how to load up the tension system up above. We know how to load it down below. But what about for the trunk? And I give all credit to Sandy Hilton for teaching this to me many eons ago. We played with yarn and did things in courses way back. Just looking at the sliding and gliding of the the nerves of the abdominal wall, the iliohypogastric, the ilioinguinal, and the genitofemoral. And you can get to those nerves by adding rotation into the system. And again, meet people where they are. When does it bother you? What motions make it worse? I don't let people tell me it hurts all the time. I get that it hurts all the time. I am with you there. I want to know what makes it worse. I want to know what might settle it down a half a point. What activities do you engage in or you avoid or you just suffer through, to kind of find this? Oftentimes you'll find with people who have neural tension, it always comes on when they start the distension. Why? Because the nerves get put on a stretch. And so that's important for them to know, like it's right here. Oftentimes they can point to it, or that hip pointer right on the top of their pelvis. Or, I don't know, every time I start to have, like if I don't go to the bathroom and I feel like I'm distended and I can't button my pants, I have labial or testicular pain. And it may be one-sided or two-sided, depending upon what's going on. But you can treat that. You can treat it with manual therapy to the abdominal wall. You can treat it with rotational movements, meet them where they are, make them safe, make them relevant. Like, well, I want to know what they do during their day. Show me. Show me how you sit at your desk. Show me what's going on. Show me the things that are happening, and let's try to form this movement change the movement patterns for you to make you a lot more comfortable. So if you think about it, if you stand and you twist, the direction that you're twisting to is the direction that the nerves are being lengthened, right? You twist the other way because the thoracolumbar is moving away from the pubic bone, so it's getting stressed. So it's the direction that you rotate into, which seems a little off because with the extremities, we move right into the motions, right? And the trunk is like we have to twist towards to actually get the tension relationship of the nerves. You want to add genitofemoral to it. So if I'm going to twist right, I'm just going to take my right leg back into stride, and then I'm going to twist right on that. And you can do that in half kneeling. You can do it in sitting with one leg off. There's 1,000 directions that you can do. If people are, working in Pilates and yoga, there's so many modifications and variations to kind of help people move in and out of the motion to kind of begin to free it up and get it to change. Can be nice things. These rotational stuff can be beautifully done in the morning for people. It's when we're the stiffest, when we get out of bed, and especially end of the day. And one other thing I will get into here in the next half of this, but I wanted to say that I can't really find, I've been looking, I'm starting to find a few things, I just didn't have enough to pull together here. But I can tell you that in the world in which I live, I see this a tremendous amount in people who are over-exercising. And I know that there's so much out there about exercise, and I am not going to say an exercise is bad. I'm not going to do that, because everybody ultimately has got to find what strums their central nervous system. So I am never going to be a marathon runner. I don't want to be a marathon runner, but I love hiking. So an endurance activity is my jam because it's going to keep me going for some hikes. But one of the things that I see are two things. Either A, they're over-exercising in an effort to burn off weight, and they're already so stressed out that it's making it worse. I've seen people actually exercise themselves right into muffin top because the system cortisol is required to keep it going and move it. And the other thing is perhaps the time of day they're going for their exercise. If they can really look to the time of day where their energy for that type of thing is good, if they can possibly pull that off, that could be very helpful for them. And then they need balance in their program. I've had a lot of postpartum moms come to me, and their thing that they come in for, they fill out the paperwork, is my DRA is worse. And they don't have a DRA. They have a softened abdominal wall because we all know the story. 3 kids and running like crazy, and, the husband comes in the door, out the door they go to go run. And that's fine. I have no problem with it, but where's the balance? We got to find a way to get balance in so that the system doesn't have to adapt, stress adapt, stress adapt, stress adapt, and keep the cortisol going. We want to try to figure out how can we bring that system down. So, since nervous system regulation is nervous system regulation, here we go. So I think everybody's familiar with the stress response system. This is not a new thing, but just knowing that, the HPA axis, the hypothalamus, has the reaction and sends down to the adrenal glands for the epinephrine, norepinephrine, all of that good stuff like, let's get going. We're either going to fight or flight or freeze, which is another system altogether. We have 3 choices, fight, flight, or freeze. And everything gets powered up. So we have to breathe a little faster. We've got an increased heart rate. But and the liver converts to, glucagon to glucose because we need it. We have to make that rapid decision also, too. Are we going to fight or are we going to run? We got to make it fast. Can I outrun the lion? Am I going to survive this motor vehicle accident? Right? So we have to make decisions quick. Because of that, the GI system is told under those circumstances, thank you for your service. You're no longer needed. Right? Because we can't digest food right now or do anything else because the number one goal right now is to survive. And the blood pressure goes up, right? To keep the heart going and the breathing and all of the stuff. And we get caught into all of that. And then the stress system happens. Then we have mediators. And then we've got the body makes all of its changes. And some of the changes that happens with stress receptors and mediators moving towards adaptation is the systems that are no longer needed actually start to fall into disrepair. Immune system, digestion suppression, reproduction shutdown. Those are things that are expendable when we're in chronic stress and acute stress. Chronic stress is the continued adaptation. So what really happens when we look at this is we may go into a stress response up here, and it's needed. I'm not saying it's not needed. It is definitely needed. The problem is when we're good adapters, we only come back down to here. And it requires cortisol and some of those other things to keep us going. And then we have a stress response, we go back up again, and then we only come back down to here. And we never come back down to here. So people who are adapters, good adapters with stress, and I mean adapting in a malfunctional way, will start here and go up to here, come back to here, go up to here. It's a learned response over time, and at some point the sympathetic system takes over and says, we're just going to stay here. We don't have time to do all of that other stuff. We're just going to stay right here because that's how I'm going to keep you alive. And that's my job. My number one job is to keep you alive. And if you make a change, the story that it tells us is, well, if you do that thing, I don't know if your heart's going to keep beating or if you'll breathe in the next minute. That's how powerful that system can be when it gets to run in that higher level up there. We don't want that to happen. We want to bring it down. Again, of course, here we go. Hormones, pain, infertility, quality of life. Cortisol is a feed into that. Inflammation, cellular infiltration, nerves and brain. We know the whole story, right? We know that all of this is important, but it's super important with IBS and abdominal pain and distension, chronic low back pain, dyspepsia, pelvic floor dysfunction, and everything else that goes along with it. And the reason that it's super important is because when we are in this situation all the time and chronically inflamed, again, constipation becomes one of the worst things, and we can't get it going and get it moving because for so long it was told, we don't need you, we don't need you, we don't need you. When people get into IBS, it's after some sort of adverse event, whatever it may be, whether it's completely, trauma, from trauma to like a full-blown mechanical, like severe accident, or even partial accident, or even just being scared to death because somebody hit you from behind. For some people can be enough, especially if they're having a really bad day, because we know that those points all add up, and the less memory you have about what happened means you're probably going to have more of brain smudging and some other things going on. So these adverse events are problematic. And when we stay in there, we can't find our way out of it. Our clients and ourselves, we cannot find our way out of it because we have no access to the serotonin anymore. We just don't. And then we can get some rest, and things calm down a little bit, and it's like, oh, finally, we've got a little bit of sleep and some serotonin is available to us. And we can make decisions again a little bit better. But then the next situation occurs and we're back into the frying pan again. And this is what happens with these clients and with us, everybody, is that the idea is, nothing works. And it's like, well, things are working, just not the way you want them to, because we're only treating part of the system. And I'm not knocking other professions, but at least they're looking at neuromodulators to help these people. I just wish we had better ones that didn't cause constipation. But the idea is that us as healthcare providers in pelvic health and in ortho and whatever else, we need to really pay attention to these systems because we're not going to get people down the direction that they really want to go if we can't get them to do this. And we've got some really cool evidence coming up that'll give you some moxie in bringing this into your work. So this is just the story I was telling. When we have a need for cortisol, a great need for cortisol to keep going, one of the things that it does is it stills from pregnenolone, which is on top of the reproductive hormones. And so progesterone takes a hit because we take a lot of what would make progesterone, we take it over to make cortisol. And so we can end up with a lot of problems moving forward with our reproductive system because we're just not getting it. And you can see the pregnenolone still here coming over, and if all of this is being taken over here and more cortisol is being made, so some cortisol is good, we have to have it. We can't stay awake otherwise. But we don't want to have it like running the show constantly because it makes us inflamed, it makes us puffy, it makes us irritable, it makes joints hurt, it makes us make bad decisions about food and about all kinds of other things. But anyway, eventually on the right-hand side, the estrogen and testosterone also take a hit. So with females and males, your testosterone takes a hit, so does your libido. This article is from Paul Hodges and Company, which they were putting out a theoretical construct about looking at the differences in systemic inflammation and a link from psychology and lifestyle to tissue health and musculoskeletal conditions. Woohoo, right? I love it. Every time this stuff comes up, it's like more fodder, more fodder, more fodder. But they talks about how the system gets set up in these loops that look like this. And you can see this here. You can see where psychosocial stress, mood, anxiety, depression, feed into systemic inflammation. Sleep affects it. Sleep also affects lifestyle, physical activity, what we eat, alcohol, smoking. Are they are they drinking coffee in the morning to wake up? Are they drinking coffee in the afternoon and having bloating and distension? Why the need for coffee in the afternoon? What's going on with their sleep? Are they sleeping? What else is going on with them? So you can see central nervous system, peripheral nervous system. So the good news is what they said in this article, but we already know, is that if you can get a handle into one of these things, you can affect a lot of things. So pick and choose with your client taking the lead where they want to work. Because everything touches everything. And we can't make big changes at once. We can't make big changes at once. The psychology material is implicit, explicit, and jumps up and down about it. The reason we don't make changes is because we're trying to do too much at once. Make the little small changes, be surprised how big the other changes come. So small hinges swing big doors. But what do? When the door isn't working, we try to take the door off the hinges to fix the door. It's like maybe we just need to tweak the hinges and get the door to start swinging a little bit better. So, how do we do that? Well, there's a wonderful little thing called heart rate variability, which has become more and more the sexy thing in the exercise world and the literature world and the stress world and everything else. Heart rate variability, low heart rate variability, which is indicated of poor health, is prevalent in IBS and inflammatory bowel disease. So, if everything touches everything, what if we worked on helping people's heart rate variability improve? That might help their sleep. It might help their stress response a little bit. It might actually help them with their motility and calm down their hypervigilance. It might just help them feel good. And wouldn't that be great because their interoception is so off is that they feel bad all the time. But we can improve their interoception by getting them to calm down and maybe do a couple of HRV exercises. And what are those? So this is another thing about heart rate variability is a measure of disease state and irritable bowel. They're kind of starting to come out with all of this and talk about it. And endometriosis, looking at that as well, of course, because they've got a disease process that's actually going on, as well as the altered hypersensitivity and hypervigilance that's occurring not by their fault, but by how our culture and society has viewed this. And again, reduced vagal tone, we know all of this stuff. So one of the things that I think is important to take in mind here is Will people find it relevant? And will people find it safe? And this study was really neat. It looked at, before I get any further, I know I'm talking about one type of breathing exercise like we talked about with Dyssynergia today. There's 1,000 ways to breathe. I'm not against any of them. I'm just using an intervention that I think helps that particular synergy. So I just want people to not walk away going, well, Susan Clinton says you should only do this. No. In this situation, this can be helpful. Anyway, these things are good. They looked at 3 types of breathing. They looked at a longer inspiration and a quick expiration. There's some good studies on looking at if you inhale super quick and then let yourself exhale and then follow it again and let yourself exhale, that mimics the neurological response to grief and crying. So if you've ever seen people crying uncontrollably, and then what they do, right, and they do it a couple of times, their system regulates. So it's kind of a neat thing to look at. They also looked at box breathing, which has gotten a lot of press, which is, to make it easy, 6 seconds in, 6 seconds out, 6 seconds in, 6 seconds out, right? And then they looked at what they like to call resonance frequency breathing, which is kind of closer to what they're looking at with HRV. And to make resonance frequency simple, because I'm not going to do all of that math and look at all of that business. I want that theory. Give me the theory, let me go with it, and I'll tell you how it works with my clients and myself. But they looked at what we call 4x6 breathing. 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out. It has to be paced. Why? Because our brains are going to wander. That's what they do, and you won't stay with it. You won't stay with it. But if you have a stimulus, a trigger, you'll stay with it. And they found that a daily 5-minute cyclic sign is what they called this 4x6 breathing, was one of the most promising effective stress management exercises they could do. There's 1,440 minutes in a day. You think we got 5 minutes? What if we got 1? Right? Start where they can. If they can, help them find an app, Calm, Headspace, Insight Timer. I'm going to play one for you here in just a minute. We're all going to practice this nice little breathing for a minute or two. But it needs to be paced. Doesn't matter what time of the day you do it. The key here is consistency. Every day if you can. So what can they habit stack it with? Their bedtime routine, their morning routine, their cup of coffee, their lunch break, in the car before they drive away for the second half of their very busy day. You know, where can we put this? And on here, there's also some nice links for you that these things, they're kind of funny. They have a lot more powerful music and things in them. But some of them go on for an hour. I nobody's going to do this for an hour, right? Unless that's your thing. You're like really delving yourself into like the grounding of meditation and all kinds of stuff. I have found for me, the resonance frequency breathing is a beautiful entrance into my meditation practice. So it kind of hits me there, gets me where I'm ready to kind of like just sink into meditation after I do it. It's more effective for me to do that with meditation than it is for me to try to meditate without it. That's what I've learned. My system likes that. But people will do different things. So I thought here, real quick, what we would do. Hopefully it'll play. Exhale. Go ahead and practice. That was about 2.5 minutes. Lovely, isn't it? Doesn't take much. Everything touches everything, so we can find the simple things and the ways to do it. It can be very helpful. Some resources out there, because we can't get to everybody, and we need to have ways to expand our work beyond who can come in our door. There's a clearinghouse called ibshypnosis.com. This person has put together some nice resources on hypnosis and what people can trust.
Could you define what heart rate variability measures?
I'm sorry? Too much rock and roll when I was younger. I'm serious. It's sad, isn't it? Yes. So the question was, what does heart rate variability measure? Your heart rate is the measure between the two beats, right? So when you look at the wave, it's the one beat to the next beat to the next beat. How many times that beat happens in a minute is your heart rate. Heart rate variability is the measure between the heart rates. So as you breathe in, it gets less. Comes to the two spikes come together more. As you breathe out, it gets bigger. And like anything in life, the more variability, the better. So I tell my patients or my clients, whoever it is, it's like cross-training. You don't want to do one thing all the time. You want to do a variety of things. When you do a variety of things and you really love that one thing, you're going to be better at that one thing because there's more variability in your body to handle the stresses and cope with it and to not adapt in a poor way. So the same thing for heart rate variability. The better our heart rate variability is, which is the inverse of heart rate. So we want a lower heart rate, we want a higher heart rate variability. Helps us overcome immune system problems, the effects of chronic things on our life, our environment, where we are, who we are. People can work and live in unfathomable conditions, but one of the things of people who are successful and healthiest when they do that are people who are paying attention to practices such as this. They take the 2 minutes, they take the 5 minutes, they go outside and eat their lunch. If you only have 5 minutes to eat your lunch, I want that to be the best experience of your day. I want that 5 minutes to count. I want that interoception of you chewing your food and ingesting it and feeling healthy and good and understanding the fuel you're giving your body and how wonderful and marvelous the sensory experience is going to be a game changer on how you digest it. How we eat is as important as what we eat. I'm 100% here to tell you that. If you can't get them to change their diet, by gosh, make it the best experience they absolutely can, because they will slow down and they will pay attention and they will do different things. We just don't pay attention to what we are kind of habitualized to. When was the last time you paid attention to brushing your teeth? Like really, like the toothpaste and how it tastes and each tooth and all of the whole experience, right? You can turn this into things that people do in their everyday life. They just simply need to pick one of them and start doing it consistently at that time. And that can start to, again, it begins to set the tone for the nervous system to like go, oh, well, that was different. That's interesting. Maybe I'll do that again because it's not going to stay. And they do it again. It's like, oh, that was interesting. I kind of like this. This is kind of fun. Then they miss it, and it's like, oh, I crawl into bed, and I forgot to pay attention to brushing my teeth. So the cycle begins to where it starts to like kick on. But if we can keep it consistent to one thing, we have a shot at it to make a change. So try nervaibs.com. This particular cognitive-based therapy app has been shown to work just as well as the low FODMAP diet in helping people live well with IBS. Can't get to me? Get the app. Get started. Do some things. It can help. Got to figure out what strums their central nervous system, though. I like going through a lot of options with people and let them choose where they want to go. Because so often they'll sit there and say, well, you tell me. That's what I'm coming in here for. And it's like, actually, you need to tell me because you need to figure out what's safe, what's relevant, what's consistent for you to do. And I'm here to back you up every part of the way because there isn't anything that's wrong here. We just need to find a way in. And then this particular article talks about cognitive behavioral intervention, superior, up to treatment as usual, whether they got it on telephone delivered or a web-based delivered service. It all worked better than just giving them SSRIs and telling them to change their diet. So there's something to this. And here's a new one that's come out recently, Mahana. And it's also a cognitive-based behavioral therapy, 10 minutes a day. That's what caught my eye about it. Also, something in there which I think is very nice is they've gone through the rigor and the stuff to get FDA clearance. Not FDA approval, FDA clearance, which is different, right? But that's what these things need, is they need FDA clearance. That means that they have really looked at the science behind it. And nearly 2 in 3 patients find relief. 10 minutes a day for those who have the 10 minutes. If they don't, they only have 2, I'll introduce them to some of the paced breathing to get them started. Or habit stack their meal or their toothbrushing or whatever they choose. Okay, so what is all of this going to do for us and why do we do it? Because we're going to take people out of shutdown and freeze or off of the sympathetic roller coaster and help them move into a much better state of being. So the dorsal vagal branch is the shutdown or freeze. I've talked about flight or fight quite a bit. We do have the freeze response, which is trauma-induced, unimaginable situations. Even if we're not being directly affected, what's going on around us is so unimaginable, we can't think about it. We have to just blindly go through it and compartmentalize it away. But anyway, fatigued muscles, lightheadedness, moves us into immobility or disassociation. Obviously, we talk a lot about that in pelvic health. We want our clients to be present with us. If they're disassociating, we definitely want to help them get the help that they need because things are coming up that are going to need their attention and help of a qualified specialist. It affects the heart and lungs and body functioning below the diaphragm, really affects digestive issues. So adverse effects, IBS, visceral hypersensitivity, diaphragm and digestive issues. So the ventral vagal branch is our social engagement system. It affects the body functioning above the diaphragm, dampens the body's regular active state, puts the brakes on the system. So what I like to tell people is we are at the top of a hill in the morning in the car, and we're going to get to the bottom of the hill by the end of the day. How do you want to arrive? You want to crash your car into the wall at the bottom of the hill? Or do we want to put the brakes on gently all throughout the day? Which is a huge help because 1 little minute or 2 little minutes throughout the day help. And people get into this situation, we all do it. Well, if I'm going to meditate, I need to do it at least 30 or 45 minutes or it's not going to help me. And it's like, or they say the same thing about exercise. If I can't exercise for 45 minutes, what's the point? And I said, why are you wearing that pedometer? Well, because I'm doing my step count. And I said, do you do all 10,000 at one time? Oh, no. Well, it's all throughout. Oh, I get it, right? But it's just something to kind of think about. Like, how can we get people to just buy in? Everything touches everything. Let's keep this going in a way that's going to be beneficial for them, in a way that they can do it, they can handle it, and they can start to change their own interoception. I think the important thing when we're talking about stress adaptation and stress either coming just to here or coming all the way down is it doesn't take anything for sympathetic activation. Seconds. Just seconds is all it takes to drive us all. We've all felt it. If you haven't, you're not alive. We've all felt it. How fast can you get ramped up? You hear one bad thing in your whole world, your brain explodes, right? We get there. But the chemical reactions to come out of that, 10 to 20 minutes to return to that thing. And that's why I want people to put the brakes on the car going down the hill all day long, because they're constantly being like, it's going up and down and up and down. If we can just get people to realize, oh, I got to put the brakes on. I need to stand up and walk away from this particular thing that I can't do. You can do it. You've just been staring at it too long. Find those ways to help people with productivity. One of my favorite things is to tell people about the Pomodoro method, which is 5 minutes to task, as much as you can, 5-minute break, 5 minutes to task, 5-minute break. Or you can do 25 minutes to task, 5-minute break. You can break it up in any of the ways that you want to, but the idea is that you take a break. No, you don't get to stare at your computer and work for 25 minutes and then pick up your phone. You take a break. You go walk, go to the bathroom. Talk about interoception. People who sit all day never realize they need to go to the bathroom until they stand up. It's really? That's why, start doing some of this. I bet your interoception will change. But, getting up more often and doing things a little bit different. But we want to give people the time. It takes 10 to 20 minutes for them to come back down off of that. And to understand that and realize, give yourself the grace. You don't have to do it all at once, but throughout the day, if you can, that can be super helpful. So, a lot of people who have chronic stress and chronic issues will take on this whole thing that's how I get things done. I work really hard, really fast, and get this done. I'm that's my superpower. And basically what that does is it just mimics that sympathetic activity. So the story I will like to tell is instead of doing, if you're going to clean the house, I'm not telling you to not clean your house. Whistle while you work. Turn on some music. Have a little fun with it. Think about why you're cleaning the house. Think about what did it look, can you take a mental picture of what it looks like before you do it and after? And notice the difference, because that can be a real game changer for people. All of a sudden there's relevance to what they're doing, and they're not just mad that the house is dirty. The house is going to get dirty. It is. It's going to get dirty. My husband retired, the professor, and we moved to this little wonderful house we built on the river in Upper Michigan, in the Upper Peninsula. And I am inundated with clutter. We have so much stuff. And finally, one of my coaches said, I want you to take a picture of the area you're going to clean, and I want you to send it to me. And then whenever you're done with it, I want you to take another picture. And that was the biggest change for me to get past it, because I could not see past it. And sometimes we have to do something a little bit different, look at it from a different point of view, rather, to make it a little bit more tangible for people. And this can help. If you're going to exercise, are you doing it mindlessly? Are you doing it just because you have to do it? Or are you enjoying your exercise? I love it when people lift and strength train because they have to be zen. You've got to rest those 2 minutes between sets. You might as well do some HRV-paced breathing while you're sitting there, right? Because what are they doing? Scrolling. It's use that phone, put in some music, have some fun with it, but also remember that you can actually, even in your exercise, get some balance in there, which can be super helpful for people and can be motivating for people who just don't want to move. So here's some cool things. Looking at mindfulness activities, mind-body awareness. There's just a lot of things people can do. If you look up videos for organ Qigong, you're going to find some amazing movement things that people can do that's so easy and can be so helpful for increasing their motility. Why? Because it involves being aware, touching, and rotation. Key things that people need. And breathing. You know, gargling, sing out loud, rattle the rib cage. Franklin does a whole thing where you just like stand and lean forward and you start shaking and making your voice go up and down and you do it all the way. It's fun and it really is refreshing. I like it because to me it's the best form of homuncular refreshing I can find. So, and also remember the 3 things that people need. So on the bottom, the 3 things that people need in order to do something: consistency, relevance, and safety. We have to have a safe space for them to either come down to that social engagement part or to wake up and come into it. All right, I don't have much more. More things that I love. I'm a positive intelligence coach. I'm a big believer in calling out your judge and saboteurs and moving yourself over to your sage brain. This is my meditation form, which is Ziva Meditation by Emily Fletcher. There's so many out there. Why do I like these? She's the first person book I read that says your brain's going to wander, stop trying to make it stop. I was like, I'm in! Finally! And Shazad is the first one that says, don't make friends with your judge. Call your judge out. Do some mindfulness work and get yourself back over to sage. You don't have time to be friends with that person. That person isn't your friend. And I like just that it gives me an operating system that I can use in the moment. And trust me, I was doing some good positive intelligence and mindfulness stuff this morning when my contact lens tore. So, chew your food, chew your food, chew your food. We've already talked about that. Rewire how you eat is important as what you eat. Sometimes finding a memory of when food was wonderful. And think about that before you start eating for people who have pain after they eat. So oftentimes we can do different things. Recall the experience of biting into an orange and all of the wonderful flavors and things that come up out of it. And imagine that feeling again. And that gets the gastric juices started and the butyric acid coming down from the salivary glands that are going to actually close off your cardiac sphincter so you can digest your food. Keep the pepsin in your stomach. And, we know all of our visceral techniques and massages and wonderful things we can do. Find joy in life, get some mindfulness in there, be nourishing to yourself. Everything touches everything. And thank you for your time.